Right in front of my daughter, my parents drove off with my sister's kids, leaving us stunned. I couldn't believe the betrayal. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I have always tried to be a good mother to Maya, but my parents never seemed to appreciate me. They always favored my sister Jade and her kids. Birthday parties, school events, even small family gatherings, everything was always about them. I thought today would be normal, just picking Maya up from school, but I was wrong. When our car pulled up, Maya ran to greet my parents, expecting a ride home. Instead, she froze as they helped Jade's children inside and sped off before Maya could even reach the door. My heart sank as Mom rolled down the window and said coldly, "Not today." I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. I called Jade, hoping for some explanation, only to learn it was all planned. They wanted to humiliate me. I realized my family had been undermining me for years, and it had to stop. I started keeping track of everything, from school incidents to family events. I quietly spoke to teachers and friends who had seen how unfair my parents were. Then I set a plan. At a school event, I calmly told the truth in front of everyone, showing their favoritism and lies. Seeing them finally realize the damage they caused felt like justice. Maya hugged me tightly, and I knew I had protected her and myself. I set boundaries, cut the manipulation, and found strength I didn't know I had. Today, we are free from their control, and our lives are finally ours. Ever since Maya was born, I noticed how my parents treated Jade's kids differently. Every achievement, every small success of theirs, was celebrated loudly, while mine were barely acknowledged. I tried to stay calm, but their constant comparison stung. Even simple things like school recitals or family dinners turned into competitions, with my parenting questioned at every turn. Holidays were the worst, gifts, attention, even compliments always went to Jade's children first. I felt invisible, like nothing I did mattered. Over time, the favoritism became harder to ignore. It wasn't just the little things. My parents would dismiss my suggestions and decisions, yet follow Jade's every idea without hesitation. It felt like they were always undermining me, making me doubt myself in front of Maya. I began to realize this pattern wasn't accidental. My parents' bias wasn't just annoying, it was intentional, shaping how they treated all of us. The resentment inside me grew quietly, a mix of sadness and anger, as I watched my daughter notice it too. I promised myself I wouldn't let this continue. The more I saw them elevate Jade's children, the more determined I became to protect Maya from the same neglect and favoritism. I started paying closer attention to every interaction, quietly noticing who supported me and who didn't, planning how to take control of the situation before it got worse. It was clear that the tension in our family ran deep, and it was no longer something I could ignore. Something had to change, not just for my peace of mind, but for Maya's. I couldn't allow the pattern of favoritism and betrayal to define our lives any longer. It was an ordinary afternoon, and I felt ready for a quiet ride home with Maya. The sun was low, and the playground buzzed with kids leaving school. I parked near the curb and called out for Maya to grab her backpack. As we approached, I saw my parents' familiar car rolling toward the line of waiting parents. Relief washed over me. I thought they might help with the usual chaos. I waved, smiling, ready to thank them. Then I froze. Jade's children ran forward eagerly and jumped into the back seat before Maya could even reach the door. The car lurched forward, and in a heartbeat, it was moving away. Maya stopped, stunned, her little hand reaching toward the car as if it could come back for her. I ran after them, my voice breaking as I called her name, but the vehicle didn't slow. My chest tightened, watching my daughter's hopeful expression fade into confusion and fear. She looked at me, eyes wide, searching for some explanation that I didn't have in that moment. The scene felt surreal, like the world had shifted beneath us. Other parents glanced, whispering, but none could help. I realized my parents had planned this, and Maya was caught in the middle. I crouched down beside her, holding her small hands, trying to calm her trembling body. Her lips quivered as she asked why they didn't stop. My mind raced. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was deliberate, and it cut deeper than I could have imagined. In that instant, I knew nothing would be the same. I had to protect Maya, and I had to find a way to show my parents that this betrayal couldn't continue. Maya sprinted toward the car, her tiny voice calling out for help. Her excitement vanished the moment she saw Mom's face at the window. Harriet leaned out slightly and said, flat and unfeeling, "Not today." Time seemed to stop. I watched my daughter's hopeful expression collapse into confusion and hurt. Her little shoulders shook as tears welled up, and I felt a sharp pang of helplessness. I wanted to reach through the glass and grab her, but there was nothing I could do. A rush of anger surged inside me, mixed with disbelief. How could they treat Maya like this? How could my own parents watch and do nothing to protect their granddaughter? My chest tightened, and humiliation burned through me as I realized everyone around us saw it, the parents who were supposed to care, turning away without a second thought. I knelt beside Maya, wrapping my arms around her trembling frame. Her small face pressed into my chest, and I whispered that it wasn't her fault. I tried to steady my own breathing while rage and sorrow twisted inside me. In that moment, the truth hit me hard. This wasn't a careless mistake or a misunderstanding. Every move, every action, had been planned. The coldness in Harriet's eyes made it clear, it was intentional. They wanted to make a statement, and we were the ones paying the price. Watching Maya try to process the rejection, I felt a fire ignite inside me. I knew I couldn't let this go. I had to protect her, and I had to find a way to make them understand that their cruelty wouldn't be ignored. This betrayal had crossed a line, and I was done standing by. Shaking, I grabbed my phone and called Jade, my hands trembling. I needed answers, needed to understand why they had treated Maya like that. When she picked up, her tone was calm, almost proud. "I thought you could use a reminder," she said casually. "Mom and Dad and I decided it would teach you a lesson." The words hit me like a punch. A lesson? At the expense of my daughter's feelings? My chest tightened as anger and disbelief collided. Everything started to make sense, the constant undermining, the subtle digs at my parenting, the way my successes were minimized while hers were celebrated. I realized I had been surrounded by people I should have trusted, people who pretended to care but were quietly working against me. They had orchestrated moments, manipulated situations, and twisted stories to make me doubt myself. Every embarrassment, every slight, every time I felt unseen, it wasn't accidental. Jade spoke on, oblivious to the storm inside me. She didn't see that the laughter of her kids at school events, the way my parents always sided with her, was carefully planned to make me feel small. I finally understood the pattern, the long game they had been playing for years. My heart sank, but beneath it, a resolve began to grow. I could feel the sting of betrayal, sharp and burning, but I also knew that recognizing it was the first step toward taking back control. They had tried to manipulate me, humiliate me, and gaslight me for years, but I wasn't going to let them win anymore. Something had shifted inside me. I understood the depth of their deception, and I knew it was time to fight back, not with anger alone, but with strategy and determination. I knew I couldn't let them continue hurting Maya or me. I decided it was time to act, quietly and carefully. I started keeping notes of every incident, every slight, every moment where my parents or Jade had crossed the line. School recitals, birthday parties, playdates, even casual conversations, they all went on my list. I wrote down dates, what happened, who witnessed it, and how it affected Maya. I wanted proof, something concrete I could use when the time came. I also revisited past events I had dismissed before. Little humiliations, snide comments, times they made me doubt my choices, all of it became part of my plan. I realized their pattern was predictable, and if I paid attention, I could anticipate their next moves. Step by step, I mapped out a way to regain control. It wasn't about revenge through yelling or confrontation, it was about showing them that I would no longer be a victim. I needed to reclaim my authority as a mother and protect Maya from being hurt again. I spent evenings quietly organizing my notes, reflecting on what I wanted to accomplish. My mind ran through possible scenarios, planning how to confront them in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of power. I wasn't helpless anymore. Every record I kept, every memory I documented, was a brick in the foundation of my plan. I was building a way to show them that their favoritism, manipulation, and cruelty had consequences. By the time I finished, I knew I was ready. I had a strategy, and this time I would stand firm. No more humiliation, no more ignoring the pain they caused. It was my turn to take control and protect the life I had built with Maya. I realized I couldn't face this alone. I began reaching out quietly to people who had seen how my parents and Jade treated us. Teachers who had noticed favoritism, neighbors who had witnessed awkward incidents, even family friends who had heard snide remarks, all became part of my circle. I approached them carefully, never revealing too much at once. I shared details in a calm, factual way, asking for their perspective rather than confrontation. Most understood immediately and offered subtle support, observations, advice, or simply reassurance that I wasn't imagining things. Little by little, I built a network of allies who could witness the truth when it mattered. I kept notes of their observations and confirmations, adding another layer to the plan I was quietly shaping. I also paid attention to the patterns my parents followed. With the help of these allies, I could predict how they might try to manipulate situations or embarrass me. I started mapping out their usual tactics and how to counter them without raising suspicion. It felt empowering to know I wasn't alone. I had people who understood what I was going through and who could back me up if necessary. Their support didn't come with judgment or drama, it was practical, discreet, and solid. As I strengthened these connections, I felt my confidence grow. Every conversation and observation added clarity and strategy to my approach. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was preparing, carefully and methodically, for the moment when I could reclaim respect and show them that their games would no longer control our lives. By the time I was ready, I knew I had allies who could quietly validate the truth, giving me the foundation I needed to confront the favoritism and manipulation once and for all. I decided it was time to turn the tables. A school play was coming up, and I saw an opportunity. Quietly, I arranged for key witnesses, teachers, friends, and neighbors who had seen everything, to be present. I wanted the truth to be undeniable. I prepared carefully, collecting notes, records, and examples of every slight and manipulation over the years. Each incident was documented with dates, details, and witnesses, forming a clear picture of the favoritism and mistreatment my parents and Jade had shown. I didn't make a scene or announce anything in advance. Everything had to appear normal. The goal was for them to walk into a familiar setting, surrounded by people, unaware that their actions would be revealed. I coordinated with teachers to ensure the timing was right. I subtly made sure parents and staff knew where to look and when, without giving away the plan. Everything had to align perfectly so there was no chance to deny or twist the story. On the day of the play, I stayed calm, holding Maya's hand, while my heart raced with anticipation. I watched my parents arrive, confident they were in control, oblivious to what was coming. Jade followed, laughing and chatting, completely unaware that the room was set for exposure. I reminded myself to stay steady, letting the evidence and witnesses speak for themselves. My goal wasn't anger or revenge through shouting, it was clarity, truth, and accountability. Every detail had been thought out. The trap was ready. All that was left was for the performance to begin, and for the moment when years of hidden betrayal would finally surface, in front of everyone who mattered. The day of the school event arrived, and I stayed composed, keeping Maya close. Everything was in place. I waited until the moment felt right, then spoke up, drawing the attention of everyone around. I calmly described the incidents I had documented over the years, the subtle insults, the constant favoritism, the ways my parents undermined me and manipulated situations to elevate Jade's children. I presented facts, dates, and witness accounts, letting the evidence speak for itself. Harriet and Clive shifted uncomfortably as the room went silent. Faces of teachers and parents reflected surprise and concern. They tried to deflect, but every example I gave was undeniable, each story corroborated by witnesses who had been quietly observing for months. Jade attempted to interrupt, laughing nervously and trying to explain away her role. I held up a hand and gestured toward those who had seen the patterns firsthand. Their quiet nods and confirmations left no room for her excuses. The tension in the room was thick. My parents' confident expressions faltered, replaced by embarrassment and shock. For the first time, they experienced the weight of their actions in a setting where they couldn't control the narrative. I focused on staying calm, speaking with clarity and certainty. Every detail I shared highlighted their repeated betrayals, making it impossible for them to twist the truth. Maya watched beside me, her eyes wide but trusting. I knew in that moment she understood that standing up to unfairness was not only possible but necessary. The confrontation was complete, the hidden manipulations and favoritism laid bare for all to see. By the end, Harriet, Clive, and even Jade were speechless. The room acknowledged the injustice, and I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing the truth could no longer be denied. Maya clung to my side, her small hand gripping mine as she watched me speak with steady confidence. For the first time, she seemed truly seen, safe, and understood. Her worried frown softened, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Across the room, my parents' faces had drained of color. They looked around, realizing the weight of years spent undermining me and elevating Jade's children. Every teacher, friend, and neighbor who had quietly witnessed the favoritism now watched them in silent judgment. Jade's lips pressed into a thin line, and she avoided eye contact, unable to explain or justify her actions. There was no shouting, no drama from me, just calm clarity. The truth spoke for itself, and it stung more than anything I could have said. I noticed the tension in their shoulders, the way they shifted uncomfortably as the reality of their behavior settled over them. No arguments, no excuses, they were exposed, and it was their own actions that delivered the lesson. Maya squeezed my hand and whispered a small, trusting thank you. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing she now understood that standing up for ourselves could change everything. I didn't need to raise my voice or lash out. My control, my preparation, and my calm had done what anger could never achieve. The humiliation of being confronted by the truth was more powerful than anything else. In that moment, I realized I had delivered the ultimate payback. It wasn't revenge through aggression, it was quiet, deliberate, and complete. My family had finally seen the consequences of their actions, and Maya and I could finally move forward, free from their manipulation and favoritism. After the confrontation, I knew things had to change permanently. I made it clear to my parents and Jade that their interference in my life and Maya's was over. No more surprises, no more favoritism, no more manipulation. I established firm rules for future interactions. Visits would be limited and structured, conversations monitored, and decisions about Maya's life would be mine alone. I wasn't asking for permission or approval, I was taking control of what had always been mine to protect. At home, I focused on rebuilding a sense of security for Maya. I explained to her, in simple words, that it was okay to stand up for herself and that we didn't have to accept hurtful behavior, even from family. I wanted her to understand dignity, respect, and boundaries firsthand. I began teaching her through example, calmly asserting our needs, saying no when necessary, and refusing to let others dictate our lives. Each small action reinforced our independence and strengthened our confidence. The weight of years of manipulation and favoritism slowly lifted. With boundaries firmly in place, I could breathe easier, make decisions freely, and nurture Maya without fear of interference. Freedom felt strange at first, but also empowering. I realized that protecting our emotional space wasn't selfish, it was essential. Our lives could now be guided by fairness, love, and mutual respect, rather than the expectations and control of others. Step by step, I felt stronger, more confident, and in control. Maya thrived, and I finally experienced peace. For the first time in years, I knew we were safe, respected, and free to live on our own terms, untouched by the toxicity that had haunted us for so long. Sitting quietly in the evening, I looked back on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the manipulation, and the favoritism that had shadowed our lives now felt like lessons rather than chains. I realized how much stronger I had become, how independent I truly was. Maya slept soundly beside me, her face calm and relaxed. I knew she trusted me completely now, feeling safe under my care. That sense of protection filled me with quiet pride. I had created a world where she could thrive without fear or confusion. I thought about my parents and Jade. The balance had shifted permanently. Their power to control, embarrass, or belittle me was gone. Every action I had taken, every careful plan, had reshaped our family dynamic. They would no longer dictate our lives or undermine our confidence. My revenge had not come from anger or confrontation alone. It had been measured, deliberate, and precise. I hadn't needed to yell or fight, simply standing firm, presenting the truth, and asserting boundaries had been enough. That subtle victory gave me a sense of calm satisfaction unlike anything before. Looking at Maya's peaceful face, I understood the full impact of my actions. We had reclaimed our lives, our dignity, and our emotional safety. I was finally free to live without fear of favoritism or manipulation. For the first time in years, I felt completely empowered. My voice, once ignored, was heard and respected. The betrayal no longer held power over me. I had turned pain into strength, humiliation into clarity, and resentment into resolution. I knew now that we had a fresh start, one built on truth, courage, and self-respect. We were finally free, and I could face the future with confidence, knowing that nothing could shake the life I had fought to protect.